I want to thank you all for coming here and supporting this very informative and at the same time very important conference. I want to say just a couple of words. Roseanne talked to you about her candidacy. She recently won the nomination, she and Cindy Sheehan, of the Peace and Freedom Party. And we've got some Peace and Freedom Party representatives who are here at this conference. They have this form. This is a re-registration form. I used to be registered to vote here in California, but I've moved back home to Georgia. But I know here you have the Peace and Freedom Party here, you have do not state, decline to state, many different ways in which you can register to vote. We are encouraging those of you who are so inclined to please re-register under the Peace and Freedom Party. Otherwise, in 2014, because of recent election law changes, the Peace and Freedom Party might not be on the ballot. And that important aspect of voter choice will be missing from California. So protect voter choice, and if you are so inclined, register, change your registration to Peace and Freedom. Now, there's another thing I'd like to say as well, and that pertains to us being able to think about the unthinkable, to think the unthinkable. Just a few weeks ago, I'm told that the unthinkable happened right here in Los Angeles. And what would that be? That the Los Angeles City Council voted to close medical marijuana dispensaries. That in California is the unthinkable. That they would go against what the people mobilized and allowed to happen in the state assembly, that the city council members would go against their own constituents. Wait until you hear Roseanne Barr's position on medical marijuana. For those of you who are users or supporters of the right for the use of medical marijuana, stay tuned, because Roseanne will be speaking about that very soon, and I hope that that will be an additional encouragement to re-register under the Peace and Freedom banner. Now, with that having been said, what I'd like to just mention briefly are a few things that we thought were unthinkable, and yet they happened. Like, for example, Love Canal. You remember Love Canal? 3 Mile Island. You remember 3 Mile Island? If you don't remember 3 Mile Island, what about Fukushima? And whoever would have thought that what happened in Fukushima would be actively suppressed by our own government here in the United States, so that we would not know that the winds circling around Fukushima would eventually bring that radiation to the west coast of the United States, and then eventually all over the United States. And instead of our government being a responsible entity and telling us to prepare ourselves, they shut down the monitoring systems and then raise the rates so that, of course, there's no danger. Whoever would have thought that our responsible United States government would have done such a thing? But you see, some of us are accustomed to thinking the unthinkable because we live the unlivable. Some of us have experienced not the bright, shiny, gleaming city on the hill that so many of our U.S. leaders talk about, but we live in the underbelly of the system that supports that bright, shining city on the hill. And so one of the things that I always remember is those COINTELPRO documents, the counterintelligence program documents, where marriages of individuals whose only dream was to see a United States that benefited everybody, where everybody was welcome, not only at the table of social gatherings, but also was welcome at the table of public policy making. But those COINTELPRO documents, those documents of the counterintelligence program, showed us that our national leaders were willing to disrupt marriages. They were willing to spy on individuals. They were willing to break into people's houses and steal documents. And they were willing to join with military intelligence, violating every precept of the division between military operations and law enforcement. And they were even willing to target, and in the words of the FBI, they were willing to neutralize people that they found to be problematic, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Another aspect of this unthinkable things that our government was willing to do is about those documents that were written in the early 1960s called Operation Northwoods. Are y'all familiar with Operation Northwoods? This was a plan that was conceived in the bowels of the Pentagon, where our generals, who are sworn to protect us, wanted so much to go to war against Castro's Cuba that they devised a plan to wreak terror on the streets of the United States of America. And they write down in these documents that are available to you to go home today and read on the internet. They said that they would hijack planes. They said that they would hijack ships. When they hijacked the planes, they, of course, were going to blame it on the Cubans. And when they hijacked the planes, they wrote that it would be more outrageous to the people of the United States if there were university students on those planes going home for spring break. And then opposition to the war that they planned against Castro's Cuba would dissipate. Now that is strangely reminiscent of a Mr. Paul Wolfowitz, who at the time was number 2 in the Pentagon, who was trying to decide, remember, what the American people would buy to justify a war against the people of Iraq. And he said, we were just sitting around a table, and we came up with weapons of mass destruction. And we decided that the people would buy that lie. And so 935 times, your leaders and my leaders, elected by us in that sacred bond, betrayed us, lied to the world, and took our country into war against the people of Iraq in an act that I call patricide, because we are killing a country. We are killing countries now all over the planet. Patricide, sociocide, the killing of entire societies, including our own. What they will do abroad, they won't hesitate to do at home. Mario Savio said, and I wish that I had had the opportunity to meet him because he's my hero. And of course, you all probably know the quote better than me. He said, "There comes a time when the machine becomes so odious that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you have to say to the owners who run the machine that they've got to stop it or we're going to stop it. And you've got to be willing to put your entire bodies against the gears and the levers and the wheels of the machine in order to stop it." Well, last night, I was with S. Brian Wilson, a gentleman who put his entire body against the gears and the levers of the machine, and he was trying to stop U.S. aggression against the people of Nicaragua. And of course, he lay his body down on train tracks. He thought that the train would stop. This was a train that was carrying munitions and that whole Iran-Contra thing. When the United States created something called crack cocaine and sent it into every black neighborhood in the country. Well, the train didn't stop. And that's right, it speeded up. And Brian Wilson's legs were amputated. And he was at an event last night talking about his transformation. He's a Republican. He was gung-ho for the Vietnam War. And then all of a sudden, when he bombed with napalm a village and he had to go in and count the numbers of dead, there was a woman and she was holding 3 children, and her eyes were open. She was dead, of course, but her eyes were open. And he said at that moment, he knew that everything that the military had said to him, all of that training to kill, all of that propaganda to the people of this country, it all was a lie. And that woman was his sister. So if we can realize that, yes, our government is capable of constructing plans to wreak terror on the streets of the United States just so they can go to war, why wouldn't they do something called geoengineering and create this thing that we know as chemtrails? Now, you know, when I was in the Congress, I loved to do those special orders. Special orders are the speeches that members of Congress give when nobody is in the chamber. But you see, and it's late at night. But you see, there's a 3-hour time difference. And the people of California would always be watching. And so I didn't really know anything about, like, geoengineering. It's a big word, about chemtrails. It's a scientific thing. I didn't know anything about it, but I knew something was up with the strange things in the sky. And they're literally strange things in the sky. And in fact, what I discovered was that all we have to do is just look up. That's all we have to do. I'm about to close, but I want to say to you that what we are trying to prevent is a Soylent Green world. This National Geographic magazine came in the mail today to my great friend Didan Kamathi, who has a radio program on Freedom Now and who talks about these kinds of issues all the time regularly, so I'm giving a little plug to Freedom Now on Pacifica's KPFK. This National Geographic magazine says, "What's up with the weather?" Well, you know, I think that's why we had this program today and tomorrow and yesterday, because there's a lot of scientific evidence that the geoengineering is not just a figment of our imaginations, it is real. It is real, and it will only get worse until we stand up and say no. So thank you very much.